Usually, when weapons get nerfed, people loses their minds and they go like, oh, they made the weapon usable, so now it's trash. Well, it is not the case for our favorite chicken leg, our all-time favorite chicken leg right here. This used to be a very powerful weapon. It's still a monstrous, filthy, powerful weapon if you build it properly. Because now you do have to rely a little bit more on the builds. But let me tell you what it used to do in the patch on the launch of Shadow of the Tree. Well, simply enough, it would cause instant bleeding on everything that it would hit, because it had like around 250 bleed build-up, and on top of that, that is not the only thing that the weapon has. The heavy attacks, especially the charge heavy attacks, they do more bleeding damage. I do have been doing a little bit of testing, so it doesn't matter whether you're doing a regular heavy attack or a charge heavy attack. The charge heavy attack is going to deal more bleeding damage. Still, the weapon still retains so much bleeding damage, bleeding buildup, while still dealing a decent amount of damage. What's the difference now? Well, the main difference is that now is that instead of having to charge one heavy attack to cause bleeding, now you have to use one charge heavy attack and one single heavy attack. I have been doing the testing. That seems to be by far the best option to do so. Although, however, if you're taking advantage of the enemies and weak spots and the timings, then might as well just at all times be using charge heavy attacks, because that's what we're going to be building this weapon for charge heavy attacks. Like I said, the build is still going to deal bleeding in 2 charge attacks, which is nuts. On top of that, the damage of the weapon for a blood infused weapon, it's really not that bad. That being said, how should we build the weapon? You need enough endurance to be able to use 51 poise on your heavy armor and then be able to use the weapon, because it's very weight. It weighs 20 pounds, which is very, very heavy a weapon. Then 60 vigor. And then the rest of the points, we're going to sprinkle them in between Strength and Arcane. We're not going to touch Mines at all, because this is not a weapon that we'll be using Mine for. We're not going to be using Ashes of War. The real Ash of War is already embedded into the weapon, because the special skill, the special attack of this weapon is charging heavy attacks. The heavy attacks, they have this blood spray animation where they deal more bleeding buildup than the weapon originally has, so that is why we're able to cause so much bleeding with this weapon. That being said, you still need to have some kind of arcane bloodlust buildup, and the cap for arcane is on 55. And then the rest of the points, since you already have like some kind close to the soft cap right there, which is 60, then you might as well use your points. This is a concession that you can make. If you want to use heavier armor, then you don't care about that much about the points that we have in strength. Like I said, the base weapon, the base damage is not going to be that amazing, although, however, it is actually nice if we're going to be using two-handing. That's something that I want to discuss a little bit later. But regardless of what you want to do, endurance and strength, that's where you're going to be placing the rest of your points. So the gear. I have my Bloodfiend's Blood Arm right here. This has 625 total AR damage, which for a colossal weapon it really is not that much. However, have in mind that we're building this towards causing as much bleeding as possible, which more often than not is going to be in 2 hits. I'm using the heaviest shield possible with the highest carapace that I possibly can right here, which is for my case the Banished Knight shield and the stuff that I'm using at the moment right here. As for the armor, just make sure that you are bypassing the 51 poise thresholds. If you want to, you can use Varys Mask, because that's going to increase your damage, your attack range. Whenever there's bleeding around you, there's always going to be bleeding around you. However, I'm a fashion player. I don't like Varys Mask, so I don't use it. That's just a little extra percentage damage that I'm losing opposite to someone that would have it. Now for the talismans. The talismans, there's a couple little bit of a must talismans that I should like to say that you should have as a must. First and foremost, the Blood Exaltation, which is going to increase your attack range. And then the Axe Talisman. We're always going to be using, 90% of the time, we're going to be using charge heavy attacks. So the Axe Talisman is a must right here. I would even say that depending on your levels of endurance, Talisman, the Graveyard Arsenal, the Graveyard Talisman, Earth favor +2, depending on what you have to do to have that 51 poise. But regardless of anything, you're still, I'm guessing that you're still at least, at the very least, going to have to use one of this to be able to medium roll and have that 51 poise threshold. The final one is going to be up to your personal preference. I like to use the final one with the 200 sword talisman because this enhances the 200 weapon attacks. And if we do actually have, for example, 40 strength, and then you're using the weapon two-handed, then that means that your strength gets scaled by 50%, meaning that you really have 60 strength. That way we actually are reaching both the soft cap for the arcane and the strength, and that conveys into more damage that is going to translate into as well more damage for the charge attacks, because that is natively going to be multiplied by the charge heavy attack, the axe talisman, and the crystal tear that we'll be using, which is right here. This is naturally a colossal weapon. Colossal weapons deal a whole bunch of stagger damage. That's why we're using the stone barb crack tier. That makes the attacks more likely to break enemy stances in a mixed physique, meaning that at the second time that we charge a heavy attack, that's going to be more than enough for you to cause a bleeding, and then that's going to stagger the enemy. I do not advise for you to use the repost animation of the stagger attack, because at that time it's better to just charge a heavy attack so that the next heavy attack is also going to stagger the enemy, causing stagger and bleeding, stagger and bleeding, stagger and bleeding. That damage is going to be further multiplied, because then again you're going to be two-handing your weapon, then you're also going to be using the axe talismans, and then you're also going to be using the spike crack tier that is going to enhance your charge attacks for a time in a mixed physique, turning you into a real monster that it just breaks the game because of how much bleeding damage, stance damage, and native real damage you do with your charge attacks. And just like that, you have a weapon that is still very much broken, that is still very much overpowered, and that it did, as you can see, if this thing seems filthy, damaging, highly stance triggering, poise damage, breaking the stances of the enemy, like this weapon just has everything. It has the best status ailments in the game. It has amazing damage, amazing stagger damage. I do think that this still, as it is right now, it's still very much a broken weapon. So that is why I do think that this weapon needed to be patched, because it was just monstrous what it was able to do. If it's still right now, as you see it right here, still a very powerful and monstrous weapon, imagine prior to patch. It was just a bloodfest all over the place. Anyways, it's still a very powerful weapon. If you like the content and like and never super appreciate it, not told you today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, like the video, have a beautiful day, you beautiful people. Have a great day and goodbye.